All right. So where we were yesterday, we were talking about different types of listening. And if you remember, we started with appreciative listening. With appreciative listening, you're listening for enjoyment, right? Anything like music, comedy, those kind of things. You're listening because you enjoy them. Then we talked about empathetic listening, which is what you would see people in psychiatric medicine doing. Are you listening to make someone provide emotional support to them? Or if you're helping a friend in need. Say, for example, one of your friends got through a nasty breakup. You're helping them get through the thing. That would be empathetic listening. Okay? This is why we have a little psychiatrist kit in. All right? So that's empathetic listening. Very easy. Then we have comprehensible listening. In comprehensible listening, you're listening to understand the entire message. Okay? You're listening to the entire message of the speaker. Technically what you should be doing right now. Okay? Listening to understand the entire message. Comprehensive, not too hard. Okay? So, in comprehensive, understanding the entire message. Then, critical. So in critical, you have one person, says you're bad, and the other person's like, no, you bad. Okay? And you're listening to evaluate the message for the purposes of accepting it or rejecting it. Okay? When you get in a heated discussion or debate with somebody, this is what happens. They'll tell you something and you will probably either reject it if you're debating them. Or if you're talking to your parents, right? They may tell you something like, no. I'm going through this right now. My 3-year-old, I said, hey, Nate, wake up. It's time to go to school. No! Okay? So that's critical listening. My son is listening, and he's using critical listening because he is listening to accept or reject the message, and most of the time he's rejecting my messages that I'm sending him. Okay? Because that's what he does right now. As a 3-year-old, he knows their primary word in their vocabulary. So these are quite simple. Okay? I ain't gonna lie, these are easy. This is probably the easiest part of this unit. But then we're gonna go more into science, which I love. I love talking about hearing science yesterday. So, but actually there are more. Cool. Okay. So, yes. Okay, I'm gonna move this little microphone here so I can move this so you guys can see a little better. All right. So, the next type of listening is discriminative listening. What's like riddles? Riddles? Yeah. Okay. So discriminative listening, when people are discriminative listening, they look for a hidden meaning in what's being said. You ever had this with somebody? Like, what do you mean by that? Huh? That's a discriminative listener. Okay? Or they may say, like, what did you mean by that? That you don't look bad in that dress. Well, what do you mean by that? I don't look good? What? That's okay? What do you mean by that? Pseudo-listeners, fraudulent listeners are next. And these are people who give the uh-huh and they nod their heads. Okay? Those are fraudulent, right? They're not really listening. Happens all the time when my wife asks me to do laundry. I'm like, uh-huh. All right. Cool. All right. You do that oftentimes at the table with your parents, and they're like, how are you doing? Okay. Or when you're passing a principal in the hallway, they say, put you on your duty. You go, all right, I do it. Thanks. Okay, some of y'all know all too well what I'm talking about. No. Now, monopolistic listeners are men, specifically. Like, literally, they've done studies on this. Monopolistic listeners are men, and women can be it too. Monopolistic listeners are people who want to say everything, but they don't care what you say. They want you to listen to them. They can care less what you have to say. Okay? Oh my gosh, let me tell you about this. And they keep talking. Okay? Usually people, like, whenever I get in conversations with some dudes and they talk to me about football, I'm like, here we go. and they start spewing things off at me. I'm like, yeah, hold on, and they keep talking. Like yesterday I went to the hospital. My dad had a heart procedure yesterday, and I went to Houston, and one of my cousin's son is in the hospital, checks his shoulder, so I went to go visit him. And his mom and the grandma's a nurse. Okay? And so she was telling me all these things about what happened, and she's a nurse, so she loves to talk about medicine. And I'm like, so how's the baby? I was like, oh my goodness. Talking about medicine and how the liver works. And I was like, oh, please, I just want to talk. Monopolistic. So I'm not just saying all men are monopolistic listeners. But some women can be too. But mostly, the studies have shown that men are mostly monopolistic listeners. Completers. These are gap fillers. What they do is they'll listen. And what they'll do is they'll listen to you, and then they'll fill in the blanks either later or at that time with things that are missing from the story. Okay? And they never really get the complete story. Okay? Sometimes parents do this. When you talk to your parents, they say, like, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to go hang out with some friends. And they go, well, you better not be hanging out with who I think you're hanging out with, because if you're hanging out with who I think you're hanging out with, they're filling in these blanks, right? And so they never really get, and they manufacture this information. And they're usually wrong. Okay, now I'm not saying all parents are wrong. What I'm saying is some people, when they listen, they manufacture this information. Some completers, what they also will do is they'll also complete it as you're saying it. Okay? And that's kind of annoying too. They'll be listening to you and you'll say, and that one time that I went to, oh yeah, one time you went to the zoo, right? And so they kind of butt into those things. Some people really don't like that. Those are also, because they're gap fillers. But remember, in this case, they never really quite get the whole story, so they manufacture it after they listen because they fill in those blanks in your stories. So that would be a completer. All right. Discriminative listening looks for hidden meaning in what's being said. All right. Monopolistic listeners, all they care about is what they have to say and not what you have to say. Fraudulent listeners are the ones that and they nod their heads. Okay. And the last one I just talked about is completers, and they're gap fillers. And they fill in those gaps with the information that you tell them. Question?
What is discriminative listening?
They try and find hidden meaning. Okay? So they're the ones that'll say, like, what do you mean by that? Huh?
Yeah.
Huh? I try and give you real examples of these so you can have better connections with them. Oh, all right. So I hate being short.
There's a chair right there.
Not when you have a one. Okay. So. All right, selective listeners. Now, selective listeners are those that only listen to certain pieces of information that interest them. Okay, this is like me whenever people talk to me about sports. I'm like, I'm fraudulent listening, I'm like, and then I'll switch to selective listening. Like when they talk about, oh, I don't know anything else, I'm like, oh yeah. Okay, so I don't listen to the part that interests me. This is what happens. Like, okay, I think I told you guys this already. I'm a terrible man. All right, as you can already tell. I don't do fantasy football. I don't watch football, baseball, soccer. What? I don't even, like, I will watch an Aggie game maybe, sometimes if it's on my cable. I am not a sports fan. So, and I don't like to do manly things like head to bars and hang out or hunt or make beef jerky. Whatever men do, I don't do.
Fish though?
No, I don't like to fish. I don't like the idea of waiting. So I don't feel like I can't do carpentry, I can't fix things. Like I don't like cars. I'm like, whatever, a car is a car. I don't buy special shoes. Like I'm not a good man. Now. But that's it, like I'm a good person. I'm not a very good man. Okay. And so whenever I am in a group of men, I selectively listen because most of the time men will be talking about these things, and so I'm like, all right, well. And so I'll only listen to things that, pertain to me, and I'm selective listening there. Okay? Sorry, I looked at my phone. I wanted to make sure everything was good with my dad. All right, so avoiders. Avoiders are fun. So the avoiders and fraudulent listeners are very similar, and it's very important that you know the difference, okay? Avoiders wear what's called these figurative earmuffs, and they act like they didn't hear what you said, okay?
Do they know what you said?
They know what you said, but they act like they didn't hear what you said, okay? So like it says that sometimes they pretend not to understand what you said, or as if they didn't hear anything at all, okay? So go back to my wife telling me to do laundry. She would say, do laundry. And then back, she goes, did you hear me? I was like, what did you say? I told you to do laundry. Oh, okay. All right. That would be avoiding. Now, fraudulent listening is the okay, sure. All right. But avoiders pretend like we didn't hear. All right, this is another one not to get confused. Defensive listening and discriminative listening are very different. While discriminative listening is looking for hidden meaning, defensive listening sees things as a personal attack. Okay, they're likely to pounce when they perceive a threat. All right, now I realize there may be a little bit of overlap in this, right? Because some people, when they hear comments specifically that are discriminative, right, they're looking for this hidden meaning, they may pounce, right? They'll be like, what do you mean by that, huh? And they get real defensive. But let me tell you that defensive listeners pretty much perceive everything as that, as defensive. They see everything as a personal attack against them. Okay, so this happens sometimes. When a teacher's talking to you through a problem that you're having issues with, and they talk you through it. You're like, what are you saying? I can't do this right? What are you saying? I can't do anything right? Like, that would be more defensive, right? But if it was discriminative, like, you're trying to find this meaning that's really not there. So if teacher's saying you can't do it, okay, and you perceive it as an attack, great. But there's no hidden meaning there. Like, she's saying you can't do this problem. But if she says something like, this class may not be right for everybody, and you take that as, what are you saying? You say this isn't for me. I know you're saying this isn't for me. Okay, that is you finding that hidden meaning. If the meaning is just general, right? Defensive is everything that they say on you. Attackers. This is fun. This is my mother. I love you, Mom, if you're listening, by the way. She probably isn't. So I've had to cover myself just in case she does. She doesn't understand Twitter, so it'll be all right. So my mother is an attacker. An attacker is what they do is they wait to find a moment of weakness. Okay, they listen until you make a mistake, and then they'll undercut you and then attack you right back. They're really just not nice people. My mom's a nice one, but let me give you a really good example. So I, very fortunately, was the first in my immediate family, and then some, really, to graduate from a major university. Really, to graduate from college, period. Okay. And my sister graduated from college 2 years after I did. But anyways, so I was the first to graduate. My mother, first off, didn't want me to go to A&M, by the way. Before, some of you know that I was at A&M Corpus Christi. Woohoo, go Islanders. Kelsey, you're going to love it. So I was there because I was on theater scholarship, and I was like, this is not college. This is too easy. By the way, it's not that easy. That's okay. Hey, whatevs, right? And so I found it easy, and I wanted to challenge. So I said, I'm going to go to A&M. My girlfriend at the time was at A&M, which, by the way, is my wife. So no big deal. We're in my camp. And so I moved, and my mother, I had a perfect 4.0 GPA when I left my first college. Mother's like, you're never going to get it. And I got it, which is fun. So I got it. And when I graduated, my mother now gives me a hard time sometimes when I say stupid things. And she's like, oh, look at you, Aggie graduate, huh? Making these dumb mistakes. So she's an attacker. No. Mom, his name is Victor, huh? Yeah, I'm kidding. Okay. So it's all in good fun, but she's an attacker. Okay. Question number. Do you need to know all 12 of these? I think there's 12. Okay. Julia, I would suggest watching this part again. All right. Let's talk about some science. All right. So some people like to draw this out. It helps them. These slides were borrowed from a friend of mine who's a psychology professor at A&M. So for those of you who care, you're now in a college course because this is college level stuff, college level slides. Ooh. All right. These were used with permission from my friend in psychology. So this is taken from a class, Psychology 107, which is Introduction to Psychology at Texas A&M. So there's my little copyright, not infringement. I helped with this class for like 3 years. So I know this like the back of my hand. So anyways, used with permission. Now, how does memory link in to what we're talking about? We're talking about listening, right? And how we listen. So the big thing that memory does, memory is attached to listening in a major way because depending on how well or not so well we listen, it ends up in our memory forever. And listening is an important thing to understand because it is the first step to learning things. Okay? So here's what happens. Whenever you listen or have any kind of major sensory information, the bacon goes into what's called sensory memory. So this is what happens after the cochlea sends the information into the specific part of the brain that deals with that sense. It goes into a state called sensory memory. Okay? So let me give you a really good example of this. Okay? In sensory memory, have you ever had a situation where somebody told you to, you were in a class and you were listening to a discussion or a lecture or whatever, and then they asked you, was it hot or cold in that room? Right? You may have forgotten that because you may have felt how hot or cold it was, but you lost that sensation pretty quickly because it wasn't important to you. It's lost in a second or two. Okay? So that's the important thing to know about sensory information, that everything is lost within a second or two unless you pay attention to it. Let me just rattle your brains right now. Because yesterday I rocked your socks off with the trick with your ear. Today I'm going to rock your socks off again by playing a little mind game with you. I'm going to do 2 mind games with you. The first one's pretty easy. Okay, it's a really good example of sensory memory. So right now, all of y'all are listening to me, right? And I'm going to tell you something in just a minute that's going to make you realize something that you're completely missing all around you. And you're going to notice it, and you'll be like, whoa. Okay? So as you're listening to this, how many of y'all can feel the clothes on your skin? How many of y'all can feel the clothes on your skin now? So many of y'all, and all of us, hopefully, all of us in here are wearing clothes. Okay? But it was always on your skin. And your body knows it's on your skin and is sending messages to your body that, hey, there's something on your skin. Hey, there's something on your skin. Hey, there's something on your skin. But none of y'all really paid attention to it because you were listening to me. But now that I told you, you paid attention to it, and it went to sensory memory. And in just a moment, you won't be able to realize that you feel it anymore because you're paying attention to me, and it's gone. Socks blown again. Touche, Rodriguez. So, all of this is lost now, okay, because you're paying attention to me. So, then you're there. Now, I told you, if you pay attention, and in the science world we call that selective attention, you selectively attend to it, you pay attention to it, it goes into something called STM, or short-term memory. So, right now, as you're listening to me, everything I'm telling you is going to your short-term memory. Now, the funny thing is, when you leave this room, or if I asked you the same thing, if I asked you a minute ago to tell me what I told you a minute ago, some of y'all may be terrible at it because most information is lost, 15 to 30 seconds, unless it's rehearsed. That's why lecture is so inefficient. That's the truth. Okay? Now then you're wondering, well, Rodriguez, why are you lecturing if it's so bad of a teaching strategy, right? Well, what do I do for you is I put my lessons online. So you can watch them again and practice again and again before your test, and then you can rehearse it again. And it goes into your long-term memory. Okay? So I'm going to give you a test soon to test your short-term memory, but there is a magic amount of how much your short-term memory can hold. If anyone can tell me this, I will give you a full level's worth of XP if you know it. How many items? There's a number. Okay? How many items your short-term memory can hold, plus or minus. Okay? Take a stab at it, and I'll take 3 responses. Go ahead. Nope.
More than 5?
I want a number.
Oh, okay. 8.
Nope. 10. Nope. And last one.
25.
Nope. So the magic number is 7 plus or minus 2.
Plus.
Your short-term memory can hold 7 items plus or minus 2. 9 to 5.
I get a point.
No, you get nothing. Okay? So 7 plus or minus 2. This is why some of us are really terrible at memorizing phone numbers. How many digits are phone numbers? 9. Is it 9? 979.
36.
Oh, without the area code.
Yeah, that's the area code.
Okay, but with the area code, it's 10 digits, right? That's why many of us are terrible at memorizing phone numbers, right? Because it's over some of our capacity. But if you give them a shorter number, like 7952256, that's 7 digits. That's most people can do that relatively easily. So if I gave you a number, you could repeat it to me back pretty easily because it doesn't overwhelm your short-term memory. Now, if I gave you that phone number and then I asked you to repeat to me what I told you a minute ago, you'd be like, Rodriguez, you're crazy because I can't. Because your short-term memory can only hold a certain amount of information. Okay? Think of it like a cup of water. You fill it up, and then it overflows, and you lose some of that water. You can't drink that water that's leaked out the side. Okay? Same is true with short-term memory. So the question is, well, Rodriguez, how do I get that from my short-term memory to my long-term memory? Well, it's a very complicated thing. It's so hard. Some people don't even understand it, and it's so difficult. I mean, my goodness, it's got a very funny term called maintenance rehearsal. And ladies and gentlemen, it's so easy, and I make fun of it because I say it's so hard. All you have to do is study it. That's it. Practice it. That's it. You know, I teach theater 2, 3, and 4. And someone came to me and said, hey, what's the best way to memorize lines? I'm like, you practice it over and over and over and over and over again. They go, nah, that doesn't work. If you only knew, buddy, because you're practicing over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and then boom, it goes into your long-term memory. Okay, that's why you have this loop. It's got to be a loop, and then it encodes itself. What encoding means is it gives it meaning. Okay, think about encoding like a flag in your brain, like little post-it flags in your brain, and then you think about your brain as a humongous index of things. You pull your little tab out, and you have everything you need right there. Okay. Then it goes into your long-term memory, and then you can retrieve it relatively easily into your short-term memory. Okay. I was an actor for 2 years in college, for most of my high school career, and if you were to ask me some of my lines, say, can you give me the first act of that musical you were in your senior year? I'm like, but I can retrieve a little bit of it. Okay. Some information is retained indefinitely, and some is lost with the passage of time. Okay. One thing that's really funny to know is that if you were to ask me today, Hey, Rodriguez, if I gave you a test about everything you covered in your college at A&M, everything you learned at A&M, would you pass the test? No. I'd probably fail it miserably. Okay? Because of this. With time, you lose some information. Okay? If you were to sit me down on the first day of the same class I took in college, let's say you sat me in my theories of communication class, which I hated. Anyway, so you put me in that class, and you gave me the final exam, I would fail it. Okay? Because I would remember some of it, but with time, your brain just finds things useless, and it cleans itself out sometimes. Okay? So it's lost in passage of time. But if you were asking me today, oh, well, tell me some of your lines from your play, well, I could sing a couple of the things from the play, right? Because that is meaningful things. I mean, I encode it in a way that's very impactful. So one way to encode things better in your brain is not only to practice it over and over again, but to give it meaning. Okay, this is not in the lecture slides. So one way to get meaningful encoding. I'll put this on the test too, just for giggles. Meaningful encoding. A way to better remember things is to attach it to something that you feel very strongly about, okay, or have a very powerful memory with, okay. So let me give you a really good example. I tend to remember things that gave me great joy in life, okay, very clearly and vividly. Okay, so when people ask me, okay, well, do you remember when this sad thing happened? I'm like, no, I don't remember that. Okay, but things that made me really happy, things I had a good time with, it makes it more powerfully encoded in my brain, and I can pull it out relatively easy. It's like it's bold and underlined in my brain. I can find it relatively easy in all the mess. Okay, that's meaningful encoding. Get connected with the powerful memory, compact it, attach a powerful emotion to it. Okay, that gives it meaningful encoding, and it's very easy to pull out. Okay, so that's meaningful encoding. So, like in that play that I was in, like I remember the scenes that I had the most fun in. Okay, where me and another boy had to have a duet song. I remember that better because like that was the time when I had a lot of fun because it was like my first big musical, it was like my first big lead, and it was like I was like the focus in that scene. Okay, so that was really cool. Okay, and that's why I remember it better. Okay, and so that was that. Okay, so that's meaningful encoding. Any questions on the memory stores? So for those of you who are wondering, I had to play an Irish priest in the play, and I had to use this kind of voice the entire time. And it was very, very interesting because I had to actually talk and sing in the same accent, which was very fun to do. And one of the things I had to do in the scene was sing. And so one of the things I sang was a song with a little boy, and I played a priest at a Catholic school, and he was there, and he was doing his confession like a good Catholic boy, and he said, Saint Christopher, patron saint of travelers, I'm going nowhere, but you can be my guide. And so I did that in my Irish accent, and it was all fun and games, and that's why I remember it very well, because it was a moment for me that was very powerful and meaningful. So what you can see is when you meaningfully encode, I like that switch there, you can meaningfully encode things in a way that gives it stronger meaning and stays in your brain. All right, cool. All right, so we talked about this, method number 7 plus or minus 2. Okay, this is really cool. The serial position effect. No, I'm not talking about the cereal you eat for breakfast. This is the serial position effect. Serial position effect is pretty cool because it says the tendency. Hello, Bertha. All right, let's go back. Nope. So serial position effect says you have a tendency to memorize the first and last items in a series or a list. Okay? So this is kind of fun because we know this is true. So, all right. What this graph shows is the items, the words recalled, and the percent of the words recalled. So these are the words, and these are the percents of the words recalled. Okay, so they gave words 1 through 12, basically. They gave a list of 12 words. They said, here are these words. I'm going to ask you to repeat them to me. And if you look right about 4, and right about 8 to 12, you will see a very interesting trend. Okay, that we tend to remember the first couple of items and the last couple of items better. And all this stuff in the middle is called interference. Okay. And interference, we lose a lot of stuff in the middle because everything else is covering it up. So if I were to ask you today, hey, what was the first thing you covered in Rodriguez's class today? You would tend to recall that better than if I asked you, hey, what did you cover in the middle of class? Don't ask me that. Or if I were to ask you, hey, what was the last thing you covered in class? That can be recalled relatively easily. Okay? So that's serial position effect. Okay? It's really just a way that we know that the brain works in this sense, that it only tends to remember the first and the last items on the list. This is why I don't do well. My wife sends me lists to A to B. I'll forget the stuff. She'll, did you get that? I'm like, oh. Okay, that's because of serial position. Oh, I had a test built in here. All right, give me a second. I'm going to build in a test. It's not a test for a grade. It's just a test on your brain. Give me 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Okay? It's 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. I'll put you on freeze. I think I hit it. Hold on. No, I didn't hide it. Where'd it go? Okay, let me just add the slide here. It won't take me all of 2 seconds. Or maybe more than that. All right, I'm going to show you a phrase in just a moment, and I'm going to ask you to memorize this phrase, okay? It's very, very easy. No one should have a problem with it. You guys are all smart individuals. All right. Let me change the size of this. And where is the, I want the size. Size. I just want the size of this text to be smaller. All right. Let me just space that a little more. Okay, you ready? I'm going to give you a couple seconds to memorize this phrase. Okay, and then I'm going to stop it. I'll probably give you about 15 seconds.
Yolanda.
Okay.
Wait. That was like 2 seconds.
I wasn't 2 seconds.
What else are you still?
Oh, this is
How
not.
do you get a chance to read?
All right, one more time.
How do you read?
You're going to read just like you read normal. Here we go. Okay. What'd you see?
Old
Old Harold and Young Ben. So some of y'all got that, Old Harold and Young Ben.
I got it.
I'm going to show it to you again. You're going to see it. Now, this is chunked into 11 pieces. So most of y'all short-term memory couldn't hold it. But some of y'all chunked it together. And that's a strategy that you can use to memorize things better, chunk it into pieces. Okay? More manageable pieces. Like when we memorize phone numbers, right? We put it into pieces. In fact, 3 pieces, am I right? So our brains can memorize that. A little easier, you don't know that, but that's easier to remember than each individual number. Am I right? That's not my phone number, by the way. It's close to my phone number. It's not. So, questions on that? That is serial position effect. That is basically how we learn things through our memory. We know that our long-term memory is pretty endless, but that is our memory. Okay, I'm done. You guys have time to take it. Thank you guys for being awesome today, and there have it. You want to buy